that you should adopt is if you find any toad under an inch long, you should just let it live. Don't worry about euthanizing it unless you get confirmation from an expert that you in fact have a cane toad. All right, now in terms of identification, some things you need to keep in mind. Number one, range. It's important to keep in mind where the animal occurs in the state. If you're up in the panhandle of Florida, it's highly unlikely you're going to find a cane toad because cane toads are limited to the peninsula, central Florida, and south. So you want to look for range, first of all. Another thing is size. If you find a really big toad that just astounds you because it's so big, that's going to be a cane toad. So size can be useful too. And then finally you have these more subtle characters that you want to take into account that you almost need to have the toad in hand to be able to identify them properly. And that's what we're going to do now. So first, the cane toad. So again, occurs in southern Florida, only in the peninsula. It inhabits a variety of human-dominated habitats: suburban neighborhoods, golf courses, ball fields, agricultural areas. Really does not invade natural areas. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Size is an important identifying factor for cane toads, or it can be. Cane toads can grow as large as 6 inches. So if you find a really big toad, you've got a cane toad. Here's one that's about 4.5 inches long. This is a pretty dark animal. There's going to be individual variation. You have to keep that in mind when you're identifying toads, that one toad does not look the same as another. You can see some distinct differences in how these two toads look. The one in this hand has mottling and spots on its back that are obvious, whereas this one does not. So they're individuals, just like no two people look exactly alike. The same thing is true for toads, so appreciate that. So both of these toads have those toad features: warty skin, plump body, relatively short legs. And this toad does not have any obvious markings on the back, but a cane toad may very well be lighter in color than this. It might have some lighter, almost creamy color blotches, or be like this animal, just be entirely dark. That all depends on the individual. Now, some specific features that you want to keep in mind when identifying a cane toad. The first is the poison gland that occurs on the shoulder behind the eye. The poison gland is relatively large in a cane toad, and it's roughly triangular shaped. All right? This is where all the ducts are that have that poison that the cane toads emit that could be lethal to your pet animal should it tangle with it. So an enlarged poison gland on each shoulder. Another thing you'll notice, there are no crests on the top of the cane toad's head. Its head has a little dip in it, but it does have this bony ridge that is over each eye, all right, and also runs down and goes over each nostril. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're identifying a cane toad. Another important feature with a cane toad is its call. During the spring and summer months, after a warm summer rain, you might hear the call of a cane toad, and it sounds like a repeated warbling or vibrating sound. In the sound clip that you're hearing right now, the cane toad is the one making the sort of repeated over and over. There's also several species of native frogs in there, and if you know your frogs, you would recognize the southern toad, the trill of the native southern toad there, the green tree frog, as well as the eastern narrowmouth toad. All right, so that's how to identify a cane toad. Next, we'll move on to one of our native toads, the southern toad, that looks a lot like a cane toad.